Good morning, quilt people. How is everybody today? I am hot as heck. It's 111, both yesterday and today in Palm Springs. Look, I have under boob sweat. What is that? Not cute. Anyhow, we're going to look at continuing on this project and how I am kind of paper piecing these odd shapes into the foreground of the image. So I'm going to keep going on, although I will be honest with you, it's been tough. It's been really tough. There's a lot of chaos in our country right now, and you know, my motto has always been what we have to give. And what I have to give is obviously a little bit of hopefully quilt knowledge as well as humor. So I'm going to keep doing that. But it's tough. For those of you who are struggling, I see you. Okay. You know, as a lot of you know, that I came to this country in my 20s to seek a better life for me and my family. We are also contemplating a move back to Canada. So that is definitely in the works. So if I post a little bit more infrequently, just know that that's kind of where we are, and we're looking to possibly move in the fall up to British Columbia. So that's what's going on here, and I want to show you kind of where we left off and how we keep going. So where we left off on this is I had kind of identified the various, you know, sections as highlighted here in yellow, as far as what I wanted to kind of consider a block within this quilt to paper piece. So like K is its own block, right? J is its own block, N. And so I'm going to mostly be focusing on these sections here that require a lot more paper piecing. And then a little tip here. Well, however they fit together to the best of my ability, I'm going to then not focus so much on these areas that are larger swaths of the same fabric, but rather just focus on the paper piece, okay? So again, you can see like this piece right here, right? So this was its own block right here that I paper pieced and then inserted into its neighboring blocks. I'm going to kind of leave this to the side as I focus on the next block, which is very similar to, say, this S block, right? And then see how it's kind of divided in half? So I'll actually take the block and then divide that in half and then just focus on these and then just focus on these and then put them together in order to create a block very similarly how I did here, right? I did this half of the block and then I did this half of the block and then I put those two halves together in order to create that. To kind of break this down even further, so I have this section here which is identified as a 1, right? And so a 1 references this color, which is the lightest. And then I have fabric 3. Hold on one second, I don't have any pre-cut. All right, so what you're going to do is basic paper piecing, right? And those principles come along these lines. So you have number 1, which is here, and so you just put it right just beyond the line about 1/4 of an inch. Then my next color is going to be number 3, right? And so you have the 3, you turn it face to face with the other one, line it up, and then kind of do a test run. So if my seam is going to be here, I can even pin that just to even verify it. All right, my seam's going to be running, ouch, damn it, it is not a good day. So you can do a quick test run and see if that's going to work to get full coverage over all of this triangle. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do next is just run the seam by flipping this over and checking where this line is here. Now I'm going to take the pin out, obviously, and just run a seam along the paper here. Let me do that now. So again, I have it pinned just for solidity stakes, right? And so now that I have those face to face, I'm going to take the pin out without moving it, turn it over so that I can see clearly where the line is, and then sew along that line. Like that. Okay, just free this up. And then you can see where the ink line was that I've now sewn across. So now I can flip it back over, right? So now, right, I sewed along that right there where the line was. You can see it through the paper that was printed. And then I'm just going to open this up and iron it, right? And so now I'll have this triangle covered by the white, number 1, and I'll have this triangle covered by the 3, which is this color. All right, let me iron this open, and then we'll repeat the same process, moving this direction around the block. One thing to note prior to actually ironing it open, and this is a interesting little trick here, is that you're going to want to take this where the seam is and tuck the paper, right? Because it's going to fold really easily along there because you've sewn it there, right? And then, so the paper's out of the way so that you're not going to cut it, right? And then you're going to want to grab your ruler and do a 1/4 inch cut just beyond the paper so that you don't have a bunch of extra fabric, right, in there where you don't need it. Okay, so I'm just going to clean that up, right? And so now I have a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance, and as I iron this open, there's not going to be a bunch of extra fabric here creating layers that I don't want. All right, so I'm going to iron that open now. Okay, so that is ironed open, and I'm going to check to fill the next block, which is this. Okay, now where I have something like this, and this triangle is essentially cut in half, I'm actually probably going to finalize this, right, because it's got its own, things that you got to deal with first prior to adding it here and opening it, right? So the steps are essentially always the same, right? So you see where this line is here. I'm going to put this, just sneak it up 1/4 inch beyond where I can see that line, right? And then you sew across the back along the ink line, and then you fold it open once it's done like that, okay? So for this block, because it's slightly complicated with these 4 pieces, I'm actually going to address these 4 first prior to adding it on here and then opening it up, okay? All right, so again, I've kind of taken care of this first section, right? Because I know it's going to look like this, so I want it to be easy to piece in, right? So I deal with this section first, which is these 4, and then I'll take a look at this and kind of identify where the line is again, and then I'll take a little test, right? Put my pin in here where the seam is actually going to be and see if everything is lining up. Oh, look at that. Not bad. I'm pleased with that, so I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and again, turn the paper on the back, sew along the black line, and then iron it open. All right, so I've done that, and little test run. Yep, that's looking good. And so again, I'm going to fold the paper back on where I just sewed, get that out of the way, and then put my ruler here and just cut the excess off. So once we iron that open, right, we don't have a bunch of extra. And so then that's ready to be ironed open. Awesome. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It's what I wanted in terms of what's underneath. I have all of this covered. And so now I'm just going to flip it on its other side. And before I remove the paper, I still have these lines here that I can see. So I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch beyond that so that I can easily piece it in once I have the whole block. All right, so I'm just going to do that. Here we go. Once this is done, I'm obviously going to be removing the paper from behind. Okay. And now let me take a look at this. Yep. I need to do a 1/4 inch beyond that as well. And then essentially this half a block, right, because I still have the other half to do, is done, and it's cut, right, a 1/4 inch beyond that paper so that I can piece those two together very easily. And now I'll just go through and remove the paper. All right, and again, I have this other half of the block kind of done, so I'm going to flip this over and cut a 1/4 inch beyond the paper, right? And so I can retrieve this and then add it to the first half of the block that we did. All right. Remove the paper. is done. Now I have this piece, right, which is going to go connected to our first half like that in order to make our block. I just want to double check that I have them facing the right way. Hold on. All right, glad I checked that because I'm not sure I was doing it right. So now I have these two halves of the block, and so I'm just going to put them together, and then I'll have the whole thing done. All right. So now what was block N, right, which is within this yellow boundary here, has now been fully paper pieced, right? And it has a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around so that I can piece it into its neighbors. And so I'm going to mark this as N and then put it aside, and then I'll start working on the neighboring blocks and then assemble them. So that's the fundamentals of paper piecing and something that's kind of odd shaped, right? And with this, once you understand that technique, which I'm sure a lot of you do, you can really take on any project, any shape, a character, things like this, so long as you kind of, apply these same principles, kind of chunk it up, right, into the various sections, and then just see what you do going through step by step. Anyhow, I hope that that was helpful, that you learned something, that I haven't offended anybody. If I have, I apologize, but it's just where we are right now. Our family is looking at moving to the Okanagan Valley, the Penticton, possibly Vernon, somewhere in there. So if you have any connections there, please let us know, as I will be actively looking for work and a place to live probably come the fall. Okay, so I appreciate your input. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.